For this practice assignment, you're going to be creating a caricature of a face, and you're going to be using Photoshop to really learn how to work with layers and move things around. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you first how to select a face to work with, and then how to create the selection and create the background and the shadow. So here's kind of the finished look of what you'd be going for, and here's the original. So first up, on a browser, go ahead and do an image search. Make sure that you're clicking Tools at the top here and selecting Large. You want to make sure that you're working with a large image to be able to really get something that works well in Photoshop. Otherwise the resolution is going to be a little bit off. So I ended up selecting this image here. The reason I picked it, it's got a white background. It's going to be very easy for me to select his face out, rather than it being something with a really distracting background where Photoshop is going to have a little bit harder time selecting that face. So click View Image and then just drag it onto your desktop. Now you're all set to open up in Photoshop. Okay, our first step is to select the face and create a layer of just the face. So to do that, you're going to go over to the Quick Select tool here, which is the brush with a small circle around it. Click and drag around on the face and keep painting until you select the whole face. Alright, if it ends up selecting more than what you want, if you click Alt on your keyboard, you'll notice the brush changes to a minus and you can minus things away. You can also do that by clicking at the top toolbar here to click the minus. One thing that I think really helps, especially if you've got something that has hair, is to click Refine Edge. This is going to open up a different box for us to work with here, and if you change the view mode so you've got black behind, it really makes it easy to be able to select things a little bit better. All you'll end up doing with this is just taking the brush, which is here, and painting around the hair, and Photoshop is going to do the rest for you. It's going to help to get rid of little sections of white around the hair, it's inside a white background, just to really make that selection look a little bit nicer. Well, it's just a good way to clean up your selection a little bit. After you've done that, click OK. Alright, so we've got our selection made. Now what we're going to do is create a layer of just the face. So right click on the selection and create Layer via Copy. So over here in our Layers palette, you'll notice that we have the face by itself and then the original picture behind. We can just make the original picture invisible. We don't really need to work with it. Next, you'll want to move the face into a good spot on the frame. So if you use the Move tool in the top here, you can click and drag it around. I like to rotate mine just a little bit. So do Control T on your keyboard. That's Control T. It opens up a box around the face, and that's a way for me to change the size. If you select the edge here, you can see how it kind of just starts to warp things. Hold Shift if you want to avoid that from happening. It'll keep the ratios the same between the sides. But to rotate, you just hold off the edge. You can turn the face which way you want. Go ahead and hit Enter, and the face is all set. Alright, we got our face on its own layer. Next we're going to create a layer of color behind. So in your Layers palette, there's a little box right next to the trash can, which stands for creating a new blank layer. We want to drag that layer beneath the head, and then we're going to fill that with a color. So you've got a couple easy ways to do that. You can use the paint bucket, which is hiding underneath the gradient tool. You can just select a color here, click, you got your color in there. I like to work with gradients because it makes it a little more interesting. So if I click on the gradient tool, then I can select at the very top what colors I want the gradient to go to and from. Now, I usually like to work first with the preset, and then I can change the color to be whatever I want. So maybe I want to go from a red to a kind of green. Click OK. Then, with the gradient tool, we can change how it looks based on selecting different options up here. This one is kind of a circle one, but you could also do just kind of a typical drag and drop kind of a straight line change. Just pick any color that you want. Just make it look interesting to you. Now there's lots of ways to work with this gradient tool. It's going to be kind of fun to work with. But make it interesting. Right, next let's finish this off with a nice shadow underneath the head. So create a new blank layer. It's underneath the head. We're actually going to use a gradient tool again to do this. We're going to select on the top here the one that looks like a circle in the middle. And then we're going to want to select a new gradient, which is going to be from a color to invisible. So foreground to transparent. Now you'll want to choose a foreground color, which is black, because that's what is going to look best for the shadow. And then on that blank layer, I'm going to just create a circle and then use the move tool to move it into place. And then I can transform it, Control T, to make it look kind of like a flat shadow underneath the head. Alright, now that shadow might be a little bit darker than what I want, so I can just go up to the opacity for the layer and move it down a little bit lower.